Welcome to another episode of Two Crime Besties, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Episode 45, Meg.
I know, we're just saying that's insane.
We're nearly at like a year.
Yeah.
It's so close.
It is. We've got to, and we're just saying we have to really think about what's going to be episode 50.
Yeah, can you guys give us some
people.
suggestions of what you might like for our 50th episode? I feel like it's a good milestone to celebrate. So, like, which way do we go? Do we go a celebrity type case? Where do we go? Give us some suggestions.
Yeah, and we're only saying like in I think you actually mentioned it in your little mini app that you let us know that we weren't coming back for a couple of weeks. We were saying we've got to 50,000 plays and we're pretty much at 60,000 already. It's just insane.
I know, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we really seeing the numbers climb and climb. So thanks to everybody for joining.
I think it's insane. I think you said at the beginning of this year, like, we could make 50,000 plays by the end of the year.
I think I said 100,000 by the end of the year.
No, I think originly you said 50.
Really?
And then,
God,
and I think
I was
it was
way
when
off.
we went, no, wait, hang on.
we might actually get to 50.
Yeah.
To 100. Oh,
yeah,
God,
100.
so I'm doing it again.
Yeah,
Shortchanging us again. Just on that note, though, we have had so much engagement on our socials lately. In particular, we're getting like some inbox messages through Spotify, especially.
Yep.
And then we've had so many Instagram DMs and comments on posts and stuff that we're doing. So thank you to everybody who's commenting, posting. We do try to get back to everyone. But I just had a shout out for a few of our besties today.
Love it.
So Josie, Sabrina and Lauren, thank you so much for contacting us. Lauren contacted us saying that she only just realised that we're actually called Two Crime Besties, not True Crime Besties. So obviously our enunciation needs to be worked on. So we'll take that feedback on board. Thanks, Lauren.
I remember us recording our original like intro episode. I remember the two of us like going, oh no, we have to do it again. Did you just say two or true? I don't know. What did I say?
And then we were like, why have we done this to ourselves? Like we chose this name and we're getting tongue-tied saying, I still sometimes get tongue-tied saying it now.
I'm certain when I do it's actually, don't even notice it until I actually go to edit and I'm like, dickhead.
Idiot.
And it's both of us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do it all. Yeah. And you just, I don't know, it just rolls off the tongue.
It does.
We'll answer to either.
But there's a reason why we went with the Two Crime Besties. We've never shared the reason of the two, like, thing.
We
and like,
haven't.
yeah.
We could. So we originally were going to start a different type. So we've always thought we had, what it takes to be podcasters, pat on our own back.
Oh, yeah.
And so before we even got to this, we were obviously brainstorming ideas, and I would say for a good 12 months before we even started recording, we were talking about it. Maybe
Easy,
even
I
longer.
reckon, even longer, yeah.
And so we came up with a concept, and it is still something that one day I would love to do.
Yeah.
So we're not going to give too much away of what it actually is.
No one else. Someone might steal that idea.
Oh, for sure. No, they would. It's such a good idea. But anyway, it was going to be called Two Forward, TWO Forward. Mm-hmm. Why is it going to be called Two Forward, Meg?
Because apparently I'm too forward, according to your husband.
Oh, yeah, one day Peter was like, what was it even in relation to? I'm just having a mental blank now. But Peter's like, oh, isn't that a bit too forward?
It's been this ongoing little inside joke of like, too forward.
Yeah.
Whenever I'd come over or whatever and say to you like, oh, can I have a glass of water?
Yeah,
oh, too forward.
Certainly, but you've got to help yourself, actually. We've gone beyond serving you a glass of water at my house.
Oh, God, yeah. So, it was just an ongoing joke for like good few years, wasn't it, there, that we're like, oh, we have to use that in our name. Yeah.
So one day, stay tuned. You never know. If we ever can do this and make a bit of money from it, that
Two
might
Forward
be a way.
might come to fruition.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It'd be so good. So you've had a bit of a big week this week. It was your birthday yesterday.
Yes, my 40th, right?
Yeah,
yes,
your 40th
again.
plus. Yeah.
I know my asshole brother, I said to him, like, we're going away for the weekend, and I'm like, yeah, we're going away for my 40th. And he goes, no, you can't get away with that. I can't, you freaking asshole. Yes, I can.
Yes, you absolutely can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just, a little bit delayed. That's all.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
40 plus a bit. It was fun. We went away last weekend. I think we spoke about that in one of our episodes, one of our recent episodes. We went away for some school mums, and it was lots and lots of fun.
So much fun.
We had some really nice meals and cocktails.
Shout out to Sweet Thang.
Sweet Thang. She knows who she is.
Knows.
Yeah, it was a really good fun, really nice weekend. But what did you get up to yesterday?
Yesterday. Oh, for my actual
Your
birthday.
actual 40th.
Well,
plus something.
yeah. No, such a birthday celebration.
Oh,
It was a big celebration day. So, yeah, got up and made breakfast for myself and went to work and then picked up the kids from school and went to do basketball training and then went home and we had cake and stuff when I got home, but that's it. Like, so,
It's
just
such
the
a
way
mum
birthdays
birthday.
go these
Yeah.
days, isn't it? Yeah. And then obviously it's Mother's Day this weekend anyway. So it's like the birthday just gets...
You really did not plan that well.
No, I blame my
Well,
mother.
your parents didn't plan that well.
Yeah. Yep.
Why do you blame your brother?
No, I said I blame my mother.
Oh, your mother. I was like, how's your brother influenced
Oh, I'm
that?
sure I could find a way to blame a brother.
Yeah, it's totally your mum and dad's fault.
Oh, yeah, totally their fault.
Rude.
No, absolutely. Combining it all into one like that for people, I shouldn't,
Yep.
be
Yep.
convenient for people or anything.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it's horrible having celebrations close together.
Yeah, I mean, my boys did such a good job last night, making me feel very special.
Aw.
They sang "Happy Birthday" to me. They were freaking hilarious, actually. The little butt go moves from Brody and Mason yelling it at the top of his lungs. It was gorgeous, so
Cute.
gorgeous. So,
Nice.
yeah,
And that was after you'd schlepped them around to basketball training and
Had
shoved some food
whinged
down
and-
their throats. Yeah. Oh, why do I have to be here?
Oh no, I got last night. This is the worst day of my life.
Oh, God, when they say that.
I know, I can't help but laugh at it because I'm like, dude, like, you just,
Perspective, mate.
life is going to
honestly.
really eat you up.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want anything bad to happen to your kids,
God,
but Jesus,
no.
they need a bit of perspective every now and then.
The fact that there's no basketball rings free for me to play on whilst my brother has training is actually not the worst
worst
day
thing
of
in
your
the world?
life.
Yeah, yeah, that
I'm
worst
really
things actually
confidently going to say that.
Oh, seriously, kids.
Yeah.
Seriously. My
Yeah.
kids are the same. Like, sometimes things will happen. They'll be like, that was the worst. Or, I never want to do that again. And I'm like, well, two things. You've got to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also, it's actually not that bad. It's
really
going to be
not.
okay.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be okay.
You're a spoiled brat if you think that's the worst thing that's going to
Exactly.
happen.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Kids these days.
Oh, I'll
they
tell
don't
you
know
what.
how good they've got it.
God, no.
We were talking this morning. I can't even remember. Oh, actually, Oliver was asking something about university, and Peter goes, he's like, "Oh yeah, uni's the best because not only do you get like 3 or nearly 4 months off over Christmas, you might have a lecture in the morning and then maybe like a toot or a
pub
prac
in the
or something
afternoon.
like that. Yeah, and he's like, then you go to the pub, you play
Yeah.
a round of golf, you go and get a good feed somewhere, and Oliver's like, oh, I can't
Down
wait
for it.
for university.
Although I think these days it is a bit different to when we went because it's all, I think a lot of it's online and stuff from what I'm
Yeah.
gathering from other friends' kids who are now at uni,
Okay.
which is insane. But yeah, one of them in particular I was talking to saying like, well, yeah, uni life, God, I loved it. Like, and she was like, oh yeah, people don't really hang out at uni and that. And I was like,
sucks.
maybe
I
it's certain
loved going.
courses. I don't know, but
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I was like, and she's like, yeah, she only goes in like once a week or something. So you can't build relationships when you go in once a week.
No way.
I still love uni. Oh
Yeah.
God, that's why I did 5 years of it.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah, but then I think at the time you don't appreciate how good you've got it.
Oh God, no.
You've got a little part-time job
Yeah.
and then the rest of your life is yours and free and easy and you don't appreciate it.
Or living at home with the parents at the same time and
Yeah.
studying and stuff and going
Yeah.
like, I have all this money.
Yeah, and you start to like maybe get a slightly better job than your Subway jobs or whatever.
Oh, like
your
I
first
was
jobs. You're
managing,
earning
like
decent money.
managing the store and stuff by that
Yeah.
stage of like, just like on the weekends and like, and that, and I was like, oh, you rock in there drunk, hungover.
A bit dusty.
a bit dusty, yeah.
Speaking of dusty, so we did go away last weekend.
Yeah.
I literally feel like we got back. Well, I got back very early Sunday morning. Just other commitments.
Don't know how
I
you
needed
got
to
up that
leave.
early
I
after that,
I
to be really
honestly
honest.
don't even know. Haley and I got back home, and I
Yeah.
was like,
Probably
now we
shouldn't
had a
have driven.
whole day to like keep going with. Yeah, it's actually literally taken me until today, Friday, to get over it.
Yes.
I was just exhausted. I sent a photo to everyone in our group on Monday morning and I had 3 drinks lined up. I had a Barocca. I had 4. I had a Barocca, a Hydrolite, a water or a tea and my water bottle all lined up at work.
Yeah.
I've never been that thirsty in my life. I was so dry that's Monday.
You're good at prepping though. Like, and you always like send me a shot of your prep of, like your Hydrolite, your coffee, like, and I always look at it and think, oh my God, is she going to wet her pants, shit her pants? be hydrated for the whole day.
Just a note to everyone, none of that's ever actually happened.
That she's willing to admit.
I swear to you, I have never wet or shit my pants.
Oh, God. Your prep works well.
Yeah, well, I'm pre-hydrating. It's my pre-game.
Yeah.
And it works for me.
Yeah.
Generally, I don't then have, like,
No.
the horrible hangover the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, shit. Very funny.
Oh, should we get into the start of today's case?
Just
So,
really quickly, I was
Yeah,
going to say,
go.
because I'm having flashbacks seeing you on the screen at the moment of
Yeah.
another episode we did. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
oh, yes, I do. As soon as I put this on this morning, I'm like, she's going to say something about it. But having said that, this is not the top I wore.
No, it's not.
It's not as high of a turtleneck.
It's not. It's just giving vibes.
Yeah, it's giving vibes
Yep.
of the Elizabeth Holmes.
Messages, yeah, like if you agree. Well, is it Elizabeth Holmes or is it The Rock?
Well, actually, I've got a gold chain.
You
so
have. It's like,
maybe it's giving the Rock.
yeah.
I'll take it.
Oh, God.
I'll take it.
Love it.
So what we've decided to do, we're going to do a two-parter on this
Yeah.
case. So we're doing the Lynette Dawson, Lynette Sims, she's now known again as Lynette Sims,
Yep.
case that was made incredibly popular by the Teacher's Pet podcast. Before the Teacher's Pet, I'd never even heard her name before.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that, this podcast gained so much popularity, it really sort of,
I think
brought
the
it to
Teacher's
the
Pet
fore.
podcast is now at something like worldwide, like 60 million downloads or something.
Yeah, it's one of the top 10 of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very popular. And if you haven't gone and listened to it, I mean, it's a long form podcast. If you've got, you want to put into a long form one, highly, highly, highly recommend if you haven't listened to it, because his investigative journalism is top notch. And his dulcet tones. Oh,
yes.
He's got a beautiful voice.
Yes, he does have
Yeah.
a nice voice.
Yeah.
I've actually seen him live. So Hedley
Yes.
Thomas is who we're talking about. I went to see him with my girlfriend Michelle. Oh, this was
I want to say
right in the
2018,
popular-
it was
right in
in
the height of it.
I think it had been taken down at that point when you went to
just
see it.
been taken down.
Yeah.
So they'd only recorded at that point the first 14, like the core episodes at that point.
Yes, because I got up to episode 8 before they took it down, and then I was stuck on episode 8 going,
What happens next?
yeah,
So
yeah.
they actually removed it from being able to listen to. We'll get to this a little
Yeah.
bit more in next week's episode.
Yeah.
We can talk about that in a lot more detail. But, thank God for this kind of investigative journalism, because without it, I don't think we would have seen we wouldn't have even really known about this case. And it
certainly
certainly
had
wouldn't have
an
had the
outcome.
justice or an outcome that it has. So,
Yeah.
that's why we wanted to cover it. And we feel like a two-parter is probably appropriate because
Yeah,
we've
there's
got a lot to talk about. But as Meg said, if you want to know in a lot more depth, there is so much nuance to this and so many tiny little details, which there's no way, obviously, we'll be able to cover in 2 1-hour episodes.
And obviously his interviews in that, in hearing from people directly,
That's
is
right.
really fabulous.
Yeah, incredible. All right, so this is a case of, the eventual murder of Lynette Sims. So Lynette Joy Sims was born on the 5th of May in 1948 in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. She was the eldest of 3 children in her family. So her dad's name was Len, her mum Helena. She had a brother named Greg and a sister named Pat. And they are interviewed in the Teacher's Pet podcast, and especially Greg and his wife Marilyn, they really contributed a lot. And I think a lot of the times you see spokespeople for the family, it's usually Greg and Marilyn who are, at the forefront of that. And they have not given up on achieving justice for Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, before even Hedley Thomas getting involved, they were in the background pushing things and trying to find ways to get this out there and get, an action on this. But
I think the other thing is as well, it wasn't only her family who were doing that. She had Sue Strath, her friend who Lynn worked at a childcare centre, and even she went to an ombudsman to try and get some advice on what to do. So people were really trying hard to get this case moving, but we're probably getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Lynn attended local schools in Sydney, just the local primary and high schools, and she was quite academic and a really diligent student, according to her teachers.
Yes.
Chris Dawson.
Chris Dawson.
He's well, I'm going to say it up front, piece of shit. But we'll get to why.
Giant piece of shit.
Giant piece of shit.
Yeah.
So Christopher Michael Dawson was born on the 26th of July in 1948 in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. He was the second of three brothers. So he has a twin, an identical, and I mean identical twin brother,
In
Paul.
so many ways that, like, these two grew up, like, actually they started their own language.
Yep.
That they had to be taken to speech therapy for because no one else could understand them. But they were that entwined with each other that they could understand each other without speaking, and then they developed this whole other language between the two of them.
Did you watch? There's a Checkerboard episode. So Checkerboard was I think it was an ABC production, and you can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And basically the episode was about twins
Yes.
and the relationship twins have.
Yep.
So by this stage, Chris and Lynette were married,
Mm-hmm.
and also Paul and his wife Marilyn were
Marilyn, yep.
married. And they were all interviewed for this Checkerboard
I
program.
think I have
Do you
seen it a
remember
long
this?
time ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to watch. But what I found really interesting about that is, so they're talking about twindom, and Lynn says a story about how, because Lynn was a nurse and she'd come off a shift one day and she went over and she went up and hugged who she thought was Chris, and it turned out to be Paul, but Chris wasn't happy with that. And, so you start thinking,
Attention.
okay, already she's saying this on a national TV program. She laughed it off like it
Yeah.
was nothing.
Yes.
And she goes, oh, Chris wasn't very happy with that. And I'm like, oh, okay. But then the brothers actually talking about, because they were so close, and I think in that Checkerboard program they do talk about the fact that they had their own language, they had to do speech therapy because nobody could understand them but themselves. And then they said something along the lines of, people who don't have an identical twin do not understand the bond that we have. But they said something like, well, it's not really like, it's not a sexual thing. And I'm like, why would you
even
bloody
say
mention
that?
Why would you say that? Well, we'll get to that.
Get to that for sure.
But
That's really
to me,
interesting.
it
Yeah,
was
that they actually
very
vocalised that,
Yes.
and not even like with an interviewer say directly asking them about it.
I think the interviewer said something about, it's a really intimate bond, but not meaning sexually intimate.
No.
Meaning
that's
that they know,
interesting.
yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Meaning that they know everything about each other. Which,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, you've grown up with this person from, conception, basically.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely were twins that would switch places for each other too. I think one of them sat the driver's license for the other one because he was at training for rugby.
Yep.
I believe Paul even I think he was the slightly better rugby player, should mention, because obviously they both played high quality rugby. So they he made it kind of thing, but he said he wouldn't go to the team unless his brother came with him. So he basically negotiated his
2-for-1
contract
deal. Yep.
to get his brother in as well. Which interesting how codependent they were. Yeah.
Well, that existed up until, well, I'm sure it still exists to this day, but even we could see it throughout, like, the ends of this story.
Yes.
Their bond was unbreakable.
Absolutely.
Unbreakable.
Yeah. 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 I mean, so, you hear about families who live near each other, but even like these two ended up living like just down the road from each other too, didn't they? Like,
well, they built houses in the same street.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think I need more space from my siblings than that.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to be half an hour away from. Although I'd like to see my nephews more often.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they attended Sydney Boys High School. Chris and Paul were both prefects there, and they graduated in 1966.
Yeah.
They both, as you said, the way that they came to both be in the same team is an interesting one that you've just explained.
Yeah.
But they both played as second row forwards for the Newtown Jets in the New South Wales Rugby League from 1972 to 1977. Chris made 53 appearances over that time and scored 11 tries, which apparently is not bad.
Yeah, pretty good.
Given the position he played, I think that was pretty good.
Yeah, so they had like they were known publicly. Like they weren't just...
Oh, people loved them. So they were really good looking.
Yeah, so they did some modelling as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, like what we would consider in Australia here at the time was like people would call them like the chesty bonds, like lookalikes. They were very well well, how should we say it? Like, very attractive, very, very attractive
Very
men.
attractive. They were athletic.
Yeah.
They were very popular. They were,
Clean cut
easy,
looking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But easy going in that they were like up for anything. Larrikins. Yeah. Good Aussie blokes.
Shall we say charismatic?
I would say that. I would 100% say that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get more to that again.
Yeah.
So Lynette Sims and Chris Dawson met when they were both aged 16 at a high school function in 1965. They were married in 1970, so they were only 21 when they got married.
We think that it's so young. Like, I think back then it was considered quite. That was probably fairly average age for getting married, etc. But like for us, we just kind of look at it and go, "Oh my god, 21!" I think back to what I was doing at 21, and like certainly not having getting
not
married
even
close.
and not even close.
Yeah.
So it was after they were married that Paul and Chris's rugby careers took off. So, they met before all of that. But I think, the popularity of Chris and Paul, once they became rugby players and quite well known in the community, especially around that northern beaches, the Insular Peninsula, we've spoken about that in previous episodes as well, and it is absolutely a thing, and it 100% played a part in what ended up happening, the cover-ups that happened in relation to this case, and the injustice that Lynn and her family, and I'm talking about the Sims family here and her daughters as well, that they faced over the time.
For sure.
So after ending their rugby careers, Paul and Chris both became high school teachers.
High school PE teachers.
Chris worked at Cromer High School.
Yep.
Which is in Sydney. And they didn't make an amazing impression in terms... everyone loved them. They were these ex-rugby players. People idolised them for that. I mean, it's like any elite sports person, I guess. Yeah, their abilities are absolutely admired by people, aren't they?
Yeah.
And because they were so good looking, they've gone to work as PE teachers in a high school, and I'm sure they got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
That should have been rejected.
Absolutely.
Was it?
I mean, we've both been teenage girls.
Yep.
And PE teachers, typically, they're fit, healthy. You kind of tend to they can be teachers that can be easily had a crush on by a 15, 16-year-old, or your hormones are raging at that age and all those sorts of things.
Yep.
And a PE teacher, particularly, as many other teachers, male teachers and female teachers, it goes both genders. Yep. But in this story, we're talking about men and young girls. And, but as a teacher, you know to have that boundary. You would think.
Oh, well, one would think.
You would hope.
But turns out,
no.
We now know that wasn't necessarily the case.
Yep.
And both brothers were engaging in illicit affairs and experiences with their young students.
Yeah.
So we've got so many things going on here. We've got teachers exploiting their positions. We've got grown men exploiting young women. And I'm not talking one or two girls. I'm talking like sex rings.
Oh, it was a sex ring. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the stories that have now come out from those that were involved, and we're going to call one of them in particular that plays a big part in this, JC. We're going to use that name respectfully, as people probably know who we're her actual name, but as Hedley Thomas did in his Teacher's Pet podcast, we are going to call her JC because in this situation she was a child in this, and so she needs to be respected for not being named, and we're going to continue through with that in this. So JC has come forward with lots of stories of that, and then others have also come forward since around what was going on between the young girls and these two teachers. And there was
there were multiple teachers at Cromer High.
There were multiple teachers, but we're obviously focusing on Chris and Paul. But they were certainly not the only ones. And I think we've talked about other cases as well along the way where we kind of go, well, hang on, were they involved with that? And did they all know each other? Because it's a similar time frame. And it wasn't just even these two high schools. There was multiple involved. And you think back to that,
along the North Shore. There,
that Marion Barton case where there was some stuff. I don't think it actually linked towards her disappearance at all. But in that case, there was some stuff that came out around she was unsure about what was happening with some teachers and probably knew something and information that might have been why she disappeared. There was talk of that within that case that I think that potentially
Marion
there
Barter.
was some knowledge there of teachers being inappropriate with children.
Yeah.
And the law back then, which plays a part later on too, was quite different to what it is now. And this is what really makes me feel sick around these girls. A lot was put on these girls for this, that was their fault for what went on, that they were provocative and that they were the ones seeking this out with their teachers. And so, what were the men to do?
Yeah. So there's been, I think it's pretty well known to everybody that these cases have eventually either come out in the media or have gone to court.
Yeah.
But in some court documentation regarding all of this, there was a girl at the time who's only referred to as CD in the court transcripts. And she talks about the fact that she felt it was her fault, and that's why she didn't come forward for a long time, because she did find the teachers attractive and she thought they were gorgeous. And when they gave her attention, she thought she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe that they wanted to do things with her. But then when it got to the point that they were doing things with her, she was like, oh no, this feels wrong. But she felt she couldn't say no. She'd gone that far. And so, you think about, that's one girl's experience that we know of. I'm sure she's not the only one who had that exact same experience.
Yeah. Well, this JC, so she was a very vulnerable girl. She was having issues at home. Her mother had remarried and she'd met an interesting bloke. So statistically speaking, this, can come with some, interesting dynamics. So brought in this other guy to the family, and he was an alcoholic, violent, so JC was dealing with a lot at home. And so this brought with it, she was looking for, I guess, a father figure too, so to have this teacher at school showing interest in her, who was a good ear for her to chat to, who genuinely listened to her about her issues that were going on. The poor girl was in this situation of like, I don't want to be at home, but the company of this much older man. So at this point she was like 15, 16 and he was 32. Mm-hmm. He was twice her age.
Yeah.
It must have, she must have been feeling quite special that he was, because he actually said he manipulated the classes. He saw her before even talking to her and getting to know this about her. He manipulated the classes so that she was in his classes and so he could get to know her. Now, I dare say he knew who she was in the school. I'm sure he spoke to current teachers of like, who's that girl? And, and they'd be, she's got a troubled life at home. And, those sorts of things
so
he targeted is so predatory. To then manipulate the classes so that he was her teacher is just horrific.
Look, she was so vulnerable too in that situation because I think you're right. She was looking for stability. She was looking for a family life that she didn't have at home.
Yep.
And Chris was offering her that because he asked her to come and babysit for their children. So I think we're just going back just really, really quickly. Lynn and Chris had 2 daughters and, so Lynn was raising these daughters. As I mentioned before, she was a nurse, but she then even before they had kids, she'd started working at this childcare centre, but that
that's where I make a little bit confused because the old childcare qualification was actually called a mothercraft nurse.
Yes.
So I think that's what she studied, not necessarily like medical nursing.
I thought she worked at a hospital prior to the kids
maybe
being
she
born,
had done
though.
both or done one.
Maybe,
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know whether, because when I was reading it, I was like, are people confused by that term that's being used or am I getting confused? Yeah, because back then it would have been mothercraft nurse is what they would have been qualified in to be working with children. Yeah.
But by all accounts, she was such a caring and nurturing woman even before she was a mum, but then even more so once she became a mother to these 2 girls.
And they had trouble falling pregnant, and all she wanted was to be a mum. And I can relate a little bit to this situation in that she's in this relationship with a man who is quite clearly controlling from the get-go, that there was the issues in the marriage, but then to have the element of not falling pregnant and that would have really hit her worth in this marriage of like, this is my fault that I'm not giving him what he deserves. He deserves children. He's this great bloke, because in the community's eyes he was, that for her that would have been absolutely devastating that she wasn't able, her body wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. So he probably manipulated that to make her feel pretty terrible about, heaven forbid it be the reason, like he might be a contributing factor to why they weren't falling pregnant, but it would be made out to be entirely her fault as to why that was occurring. So again, there's more abuse, 100%. So she would have been in an awful situation of like finally getting these girls. So she adored these children.
Oh.
She wanted them desperately. And she was a brilliant mum from all accounts.
Everyone says it.
Yeah.
Everyone. Her co-workers, her friends, her neighbours, apparently. And you listen to, like, I'm just sort of referring now back to that checkerboard program because it's one of the only times you can actually hear Lynn's voice.
Yeah.
She's so lovely.
Yeah.
So nicely spoken,
Yeah.
very soft, very gentle, very she just seemed so lovely, and I can imagine that nature as a mum. Like, she would have been an incredible mum, and as I said, everyone who witnessed her as a mum said she was second to none. Like,
her daughter, her eldest daughter Chanel, we've heard a little bit from in more recent years, who was only 4 at the time when she lost her mum, and then her younger sister who was 2.
Sharon,
So even Sharon, wasn't it? Yeah,
Sharon.
So Sharon.
Yeah.
So the older one, like, I mean, being 4, she has small memories, of her mum, and even so and probably it's more feelings than it is actual distinct memories, and she remembers her mum just being beautiful and caring, so it's something that she was definitely a very beautiful person inside and out.
Yeah absolutely. So I mean, Lynn, by this stage, they've got their 2 children, they're settling into family life, and Lynn didn't drive, so she caught the bus everywhere.
Again, controlling.
Again, interesting choice. And so she would catch the bus, but she'd do everything. It's not like it stopped her. She would take the kids swimming, she'd take them to the beach, she'd take them to the parks, she'd go everywhere and do everything that needed to be done on the bus. So that was something that she was, quite well versed in and all of that jazz. So where are we at now, really? We're sort of at the point now where we've established the fact that Chris is, he's forming these inappropriate relationships at school with young students. Lynn is at her workplace, managing the girls, doing, from what I can gather, the lion's share of the child rearing.
Yeah.
But because Chris, being the wonderful father that he was, he thought maybe JC could become the family babysitter so that when he and Lynn wanted to go out or had an appointment or had things to do, there was somebody there to care for their children.
He put it across to her like, I'm helping you out, because she was returning to work. Obviously she was working as well, Lynn. So, it was to help out, be helpful around the house. And that, the idea was that JC would, be another pair of hands, like more of a nanny, I think, give JC some time where she wasn't having to go home to her horrible home life. Spend time in their home instead, which JC was very keen to do in terms of being around just a regular, what she considered a regular family, and to see how that functioned.
I think at the start, JC was doing daytime and, evening sort of babysitting, and then that evolved to overnights.
Because she certainly was around, like, witnessing Lynn with the children as well as when she was being alone with the children. So
that's right.
Yeah, she certainly saw their interactions and what that was like.
Unfortunately, there were often times that Chris and JC were alone in the house with the girls. And on this one particular day, Lynn came home and she found JC and Chris in bed together. And it was all very much like covered up.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, this happened.
That.
This came out in one of the later episodes, so it wasn't in the core episodes of the Teacher's Pet. It was one of the later ones.
Yeah.
And it was a diary entry, I think they found. And yeah, they'd been caught in bed together. So Lynn was like, she can't come back here. And
he did move her in.
Yeah, he moved her in.
Was this before or after he moved her in?
No, she had moved in. She had moved in at this point.
Because I thought that, okay, all right.
Oh, sorry. No. She hadn't moved in. This was on one of the days that it was like an overnight or something like that. And she was like, oh, she can't stay. And he was like, oh, well, I don't know what your problem is. And, went down that path with her.
Because JC also did speak in her testimony around, and this goes to what happens a little bit later on too, that Chris would quite regularly make nice drinks for Lynn in the evening, and she said that was to sort of get Lynn a little bit drunk so that she might go to bed early, and then the two of them could go and have sex in the house. I mean, that just blows my mind that he would put it right in front of her in their own home
Oh, it's
with their girls
disgusting.
there, with his wife next, in another room. That's just, oh my God, next level.
The testimony of, and this was actually written in Lynn's mum, Helena's diary around, I'm probably getting a little bit ahead now, but on the night that we know ended up being Lynn's last night in the house, her mum phoned and they spoke on the phone. And Lynn literally said that to her mum, said, oh, Chris has just made me a nice drink.
Yeah, and Helena said that she sounded quite sozzled
Yes.
with her words. Yeah, which I love that word.
Yeah, me too.
I think we were a bit sozzled on the weekend.
Yeah, just a smudge. So, yeah, we're sort of at the point now where Lynn does disappear.
Well,
So,
we can go back a little bit further with
okay.
that. Sorry. No. So because to the point where Chris did invite JC to move in with them, and she did move in at first. Lynn was okay, like this girl, and it was put to Lynn of, like she needs help, she needs to get out of where she is. It was this, like we're helping her, and Lynn, being the caring, kind person she was, allowed it to happen, but it didn't sit well. And she had spoken to others about it, saying, I don't know, there's something gut instinct wise telling me don't do this, but the poor girl, she needs help. So they did move her in, but then fairly shortly after that, Lynn put her foot down and went, no, you know what? I need her to go.
So I think that was when Lynn found them.
Yeah, well, no, so then she moved in with Paul and Marilyn.
Down the road.
Down the road. So it wasn't even like she went far. But that's where this manipulation between the two brothers were, Paul knew what was going on between the two of them. So why, that blows my mind that your brother is going to be like, yeah, sure, bring your piece on the side down to us and we'll move her into our house so you can continue your affair with your 16-year-old student to boot. So that just blows my mind. And sorry, Marilyn also, like, surely you knew what the fuck was going on.
Of course she knew.
But at this point too, this was around about then November 1981. Mm-hmm. Paul went in for a small surgery. And so at this point, even everyone was a little bit like, what is going on between the two of them? But Chris specifically said to Lynn when he was having this procedure, he had to spend a couple of nights in afterwards, and he'd said, don't come in and visit me. Like, I'll be fine. You just look after the kids and take care of what's going on here. I'll be fine. Don't come in and visit me, which is weird.
Oh, yeah.
But Helena thought, I'll go in and pop in and see him. Obviously, he needs someone to take care of him a little bit. And she walked into the hospital and walked in on JC sitting on the bed in a very interesting way, and she immediately went, this isn't right. And so I don't know that she said anything to Lynn at the time, but she's spoken about it after the fact, definitely saying like it immediately gave her ick, feelings. She
was like,
there's
knew
something
what was
going on here.
She wrote about that in her diary too, and said, I don't think she did tell Lynn about it.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling she didn't tell Lynn about it, because at this point, obviously, JC had moved out of the home. She wasn't living in it anymore at that point, but she was like, there's something going on.
But the fact that he'd orchestrated his little 16-year-old student to come and see him more so than his wife I know it wasn't a serious procedure, but
no.
He was still in hospital for a few nights. It wasn't nothing, and any other spouse would go and visit their significant other.
Some food or something, that he needs, or, spare for another pair of pajamas, clean pajamas.
I'd be shitty as all get out if I was in hospital and Peter didn't come and visit me.
Oath. Yeah. Nah. A really weird situation to do. So then,
but obviously he'd orchestrated. He didn't
100%. He didn't want Lynn there because he wanted JC. He wanted to manipulate JC of like, care for me, look after me.
Oh fuck! Yuck.
Gross.
Yuck.
Yeah. So obviously this is where the two, their relationship obviously is ramping up at this point of this, leading up to the end of 1981. So we get into sort of to the December, right? By December 23,
yes,
the two of them, December 23rd,
yep,
the two of them, JC and Chris, get in the car. Prior to this, Chris had actually gone to his other brother, not Paul, Peter, who is a lawyer and definitely plays a big role later.
Yes.
He went to his brother and said, I think I want out of my relationship. What would I do here? And because there was this affair happening with JC particularly, and Peter was aware of it, what the fuck is going on in this family? They all know about this.
And did nothing to stop it, but they were probably all doing the same thing with other girls as well. So.
Oh, just gross. So he warned Chris that at this point, if you were to leave Lynn, you would be financially viable for that. To which Chris is like, oh, I don't want to be financially viable. Like, you know, like I don't want to part in that.
What the fuck did he think was going to happen? That he could just walk away and take everything?
Yep.
Like,
so he couldn't divorce her because if he divorced her, then he would have to pay her out, basically, is what the issue was. So he's like, well, somehow here I've got to stay married to her and like I'm not going to be able to get out of this without unscathed and just have my sex with my 16-year-old student. So he decides, obviously, then he's got to somehow stay in this marriage. Like, so he decides to take the 16-year-old off to Queensland. So the two of them get in a car and drive to Queensland. He left a note for Lynn, which said, basically, don't speak too poorly of me to the girls, which is such an interesting thing for him to have done. And Lynn didn't know really how to take this. As in, does this mean you're never coming back? Or does this mean you're coming back, but you're not, you're coming around but I shouldn't talk badly of you because, but you'll be involved? Or it didn't really state what his plan was at all.
But he didn't actually have the balls to say to her, I want to leave you.
No, because if he knew that if she turned around and divorced him, he'd have to financially pay her out.
Yeah, so he just left it so ambiguous. And Lynn, what would you do as a woman? You've been left. You've got 2 young kids. It's 2 days before Christmas. You'd be like, what is going on? Like, nothing was explained to her.
No.
She had look, I feel like she obviously knew there was something going on.
Yeah.
But they hadn't discussed it.
No. Like, she was very aware that their marriage was not in a good place. But she was trying her hardest to keep it together. And
because she'd not only had she spoken to her work colleagues who she was very close with and her neighbour who she was very close with about it and wanted their advice because she actually said, I wanted to save my marriage.
Yeah.
I wanted to work at it and, for the sake, their children were so young. They were 4 and 2 at this point.
Yeah.
And she wanted to keep their family unit together. So she was seeking advice from people.
Interestingly, just to note that, she wanted to keep her marriage together, all those sorts of things, but already at this point, work colleagues had noticed bruises on her when she'd come into work too.
And when asked about it, I fell
over.
I
tripped.
Tripped.
The kids left their toys out and I tripped, I
walked into a door.
Yeah, which is just tragic.
So horrible.
So Chris has taken this young 16-year-old, they're driving to Queensland, but JC already at this age was like, oh, this doesn't feel right. She didn't feel comfortable with this. As much as she didn't want to be in her family home, she knew this wasn't right either. So she started showing some, I'm trying to get out of this, and was really quite homesick, I guess, sort of stuff that they ended up turning around and coming back.
They didn't even make it, did they?
They never make it to Queensland, no. However, in the meantime, Christmas Day went by. Like, Lynn, the poor thing, she's like, is he going to come home and see the girls for Christmas Day? Like, what father doesn't want to at least see his kids on Christmas Day? It's always been a big family arrangement, for them.
Young kids, like
that young.
That is the joy of Christmas, is seeing young children.
No one wants
Christmas
to miss
Day.
out on 4-year-old and 2-year-old at Christmas. Jesus.
No way.
Oh, piss funny.
But he couldn't have given a shit.
Yeah, no.
Clearly.
No, absolutely nothing. No way. No. So I've had major memory of my 2-year-old Brody unwrapping a Christmas present, and because he was such a little pain, like at that age, I'd wrapped up a potato, like, and I've got this video of him unwrapping it, and Brody, Mason in the background, you hear him go, Brody got a potato, Brody got a potato, and you hear Brody go, potato, I got a potato, I love chips.
Oh, God. So you couldn't even get him on that.
He was so stoked.
If only you knew.
I know.
You could have saved yourself a fortune.
He was just, absolutely could have just wrapped them all up in potatoes, would have been it for the whole morning. Oh, God, it's classic, that video. I'll show it to you one day. Anyway, 2 and 4-year-olds at Christmas are the best. So, yeah.
So much fun.
So much. So, yeah. So she was kind of hopeful that he would appear. So she stayed home and didn't go to her family or his family or anything for Christmas Day going, if he comes home, I want to be home. I mean, what the loyal fucking wife. Like, she was desperate to keep this marriage together no matter what, even knowing really what he was doing.
Yeah, I think she expected him to show up.
Yeah, she really, yeah.
Like, again, what kind of a father would miss their children's Christmas Day?
Yeah.
And she couldn't fathom that thought, but he didn't show up.
No.
And, she missed out on Christmas with her family and his family.
Yeah, and the girls missed out. Like, that's what hurts. That hurts. That's bad. But, yeah, so they did end up rocking up, though. Like, eventually the two of them came back. So this was sort of, at a point where JC then was, like, pulling away from the relationship. She was not really is in it, I think, as much. She was
I
feeling
think she'd
it wasn't.
identified the fact by this point that he was very controlling. She
Yeah.
had to do everything he said. She has said that she didn't want to go to Queensland.
No.
That was his idea. And she went against her will, basically. But he told her they had to do it because, you know, he obviously felt like that was a way to get away or whatever he decided
how he could get
was
what
the
he
right
wanted.
thing. So this poor, again, vulnerable girl is stuck in this controlling relationship and she doesn't really have anywhere to go. Her parents are, or her mum in particular, is not, you know, she's not a safe place for her to fall. And what, she's going to go back to Paul and Marilyn or Marilyn? Like,
Yeah.
honestly, no. Like, that was just so fucking toxic.
Yeah. So,
What's she to do? She was stuck. She was absolutely
completely stuck. So in the new year, she does go away with her her group of friends. It was because they were graduating. So this time she would have been 17, I think.
Yes.
So they'd graduated from high school, and as traditionally as we do when we finish year 12 in Australia, go off on your week of holiday schoolies. This is like probably pre the big schoolies, obviously, that people would do.
Chris and Paul have been the biggest toolies you've ever seen?
Oh, absolutely. They'd love a good schoolies. I mean, geez, free for all. Gross. Yeah. So she went away with her school friends, like to a caravan park, and they were having a nice time. But he made sure she had to ring him every day and contact him. Which, I mean, at this stage, obviously, no mobile phones. It's her finding a payphone and calling her 32-year-old boyfriend, like, on the side that she's not telling her friends about. Like,
he was also jealous of the other boys, like boys, teenage boys.
the trolley boy, like it's in the trial. I mean, that poor
he was
kid.
jealous. Yeah, and he made this kid's life hell.
Yeah.
Just because he was friends with JC. There was nothing going on between
He
them.
apparently he was keen on her.
Oh, for sure, but there was nothing going on.
No,
like,
it was very
JC
innocent the way he would even ask her out. It was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll see you at the dance maybe,
Yeah.
or, you know, he was trying to, like, little bits here and there, like, but not forcefully at all. I mean, what a nice young kid. Imagine if that had been her first relationship instead of this douchebag. Like, her life would have been
But
so
JC
different.
knew at that point she couldn't have gone there because she already knew the type of person that Chris was.
Yeah.
And the thought of that, obviously, she couldn't even go there.
No.
So how sad's that? 17-year-old girl can't even have a fling with someone her own age.
Exactly. Someone her own age, like,
Just
crazy.
horrible, poor girl.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think at this point, like, Paul's feeling a little bit like he hasn't got control of her enough. Like, so...
You mean Chris?
Chris. Yeah, Chris hasn't got the control of her that he wants because she is showing signs of wanting to pull away. So obviously he's a little bit, you know, unsettled by that, I think. So this is where we get to sort of that early January time frame where, unfortunately, Lynn disappears.
Yeah, so the night before, as I mentioned earlier, the night before she'd spoken to her mum Helena on the phone and she'd said, Chris has mixed me a lovely drink and, you know, she was going to go to bed and they actually made arrangements to meet the following morning at
They had actually been to a marriage counsellor that day as well.
Absolutely. Sorry, you're absolutely right.
Because so Lynn was feeling like, oh, we're making progress here to get things back on track now that he's come back from this little trip he's been on. He agreed to go to marriage counselling when he came home because obviously there was something wrong in the marriage. Like they had to both acknowledge it at that point. Yeah, so he did agree to go to marriage counselling. So they'd gone and done their first session at marriage counselling on the 8th of January. And Lynn was like, he showed up, he was there, we did that, we're gonna be on the track now to getting our
Lynn
life
went
back.
to work after that session and she said to her work colleagues that, you know, they were holding hands in the elevator on the way down, like after the session. And, you know, she felt so confident that things were going to get back on track. They'd made an appointment to do another counselling session and Lynn was so heartened by the fact that he was willing to do that. So we get to the night of the 8th and the drink and the phone call to Lynn's mum, and they'd arranged to meet the next morning at the swimming pool, the local swimming pool.
Where Chris worked as a lifeguard part-time. Yep.
And because there's no mobile phones back then and, you know, you're like, okay, well, I'll meet you at the baths at 9 a.m. or whatever it was. I can't remember the exact time.
Yeah.
And Helena was like, yep, no worries. And Helena drove, so she drove herself there. And when Helena gets there that morning, all she finds is Chris and the two girls.
And no Lynn.
And she's like, where's Lynn? Where's Lynn?
He said he dropped her at the bus stop that morning, and that she was heading off to do some shopping. And then so he was, as I say, he was working at the bars, but I think it was pretty casual kind of style work. Like it wasn't like he was, busy. He was, obviously looking after his girls at the same time as working and keeping an eye on other swimmers in the pool, being fit, healthy man. He was well thought of at this place to be someone on deck to be on hand if someone was in a bit of trouble. But apparently a phone call came in, and there's
so much
conjecture around this phone call and who called him to the phone, or if anyone did, or if he just decided that he had a phone call. But he ended up going to Helena and saying to her, that was Lynn on the phone. She's just told me that she'd like to spend a couple of nights away just to get her head right and needs some time.
And even Helena was like, what? Like, that doesn't sound like Lynn, but okay. And so in the end, Helena took the two girls back to her place with her because Chris was working, and obviously Lynn's gone away for a couple of days, needing some time for herself.
Having not spoken to her mum, who she spoke to about everything and sort of stuff.
They were very close.
Yeah.
They were a very tight-knit family.
Yeah.
The Sims family.
Yeah.
So imagine how Helena must have felt. Like, I think in that moment you'd be almost a bit bamboozled because it was absolutely so out of character for Lynn. But then Chris has said, I've just spoken to her. So, what reason does he really have to
You could only believe him in that moment. I mean, and she's had obviously this little incident where she's like, I think there's something going between this young girl and him. And look, back in that day, she would have been blaming the young girl more than she was him. Which is shit.
She says she loved Chris. She loved him.
They all thought he was amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. So this is the problem. I really, with our lens on it from, a 2025 lens of how we see this, that poor girl was being totally manipulated, completely groomed, 100%. But back then, that was the girl was the one who was pushing it onto the man, kind of thing. So her take on this would not be like, oh, hang on, that shithead has done something here. I know because he's been having it off with this 16-year-old. Her frame of mind at the time would have been like, well, what else would I think here other than Chris is telling me the truth?
Yeah.
Which, God.
That's it. So
awful.
The Monday morning comes around and Chris rings in sick for Lynn to her work and says, she's gone away. I don't know when she's going to be back, but she won't be in this week.
Yeah.
Her colleagues are all
so he admits that she'll be in for the whole week?
Yeah. And her colleagues are bamboozled. They're like, okay, that is not like Lynn at all. She was so dedicated to work, loved her work. She never missed a shift. She never didn't show up.
No.
And especially for Chris to call in for her, it was all a bit strange. Sue Strath, her colleague, even said, right from the get-go, she had a bad feeling. She said the first couple of days, okay, Lynn might be sick in bed. It happens to the best of us, that's fine. But it was a few days after that, she was like, something doesn't seem right here. She'd ring the house phone, home phone during the day. No one would answer.
And Sue had actually already noted too that, as much as we said earlier that Lynn had shown up to work with bruises that Sue Strath had seen, on the 8th of January, as much as she came in that day talking, positively about their marriage and this counselling session that they'd had, she did also notice bruises, and probably more, even more so than previously.
Yeah, so she actually noticed bruises in different places. Yeah. So she'd noticed bruising on her arms, she'd been grabbed on her arm. And so, to Sue, I think she noted an escalation in what she'd previously seen, which obviously was in the back of her mind and made her think very differently about the events that sort of subsequently took place.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 6 weeks after Lynn went missing that Chris reported her as such, after Helena begged and begged him to. Why she didn't report Lynn missing, I'm not really sure. Again,
I think it's a sign of the time, as in that was her husband's job. I think that's what would have been playing out there for her. I mean, I think this day and age, 100%, her, family would have been down at that police station far sooner, just going, no, fuck you, mate, we're reporting her missing. I think that
so you think it's a contextual.
Yeah, I do. I think that's a bit of a that we don't want to pry in their relationship and they would be a bit further stand back of I think they would have been going, this is not feeling right, but It's up to him. He needs to deal with that. That's his family. We're not her family now.
6 weeks
That's
is a really long time not to see your
because was it the
sister.
15th, the 18th of Feb, wasn't it, that he reported her missing? Yeah. So between the 8th of January is the last time anyone knows that was notably seen her.
In 1982.
82, and then February 18th, he finally went down to the police station and reported her missing. And he reported her missing, though. What did I say? I wrote notes on that. Like he, what he said to the police too was that it was just incredible. The words were that he said they'd had an argument and things, and that she had a breakdown the night before, but she had apologized for that, and it was all good. Like, what a narcissist to make sure he let people know that, but she accepted full responsibility.
She knows she was wrong.
She did wrong by me, and she's apologized for it.
It was all her.
Oh, God.
He also suggested that maybe she joined a religious cult.
So, which, I mean, that's come out of nowhere in terms of coming from, she's gone away for a couple of nights to just, clear her head, to now, she mentioned something about joining a religious cult, which, like, what the fuck?
Like, seriously, dude.
Especially when she wasn't an overly religious woman. Like, that wasn't like they were involved in things like that, and there was no evidence of that whatsoever. Yeah. Absolutely crazy thoughts in terms of that. Yeah.
Seriously.
But unfortunately, like her being reported missing, though, even on February 18th, it really didn't spark much of a investigation by the police. They weren't overly interested to like follow things up and concern, because they took his word, because he was such a good bloke.
Also, because he's reported her missing in their local police station.
Yeah.
The local police and the rugby team and the school and everyone, they're all a very small and insular community. Mm-hmm. So the cops knew Chris and Paul and idolised them, thought they were amazing because they were ex-Newcastle Jets players and were just, top blokes. And so they accepted Chris's story at face value. They didn't do any I think the only thing they really investigated was whether her bank card had been used.
Yeah, well, it did get used a couple of times after she left.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to no lead.
No.
And then also they checked to see if she'd used her Medicare card, which she hadn't. No. So, and that was it. So, okay, right. So we've got a woman who we don't know where she is, but then, so Chris's brother-in-law, so on his side, how did it work? I think it was, so Chris's brother Paul, his wife Marilyn, her brother.
Right.
Claims
he saw
Lynn at a bus stop.
Yes.
A couple of months after she went missing.
There were a number of sightings from people who knew her or didn't know her at all. There were some sightings that have been mentioned.
But the fact that this guy was sort of related to her, they took it
quite seriously to kind of go, well, he'd know if it was her or not.
And he said he saw her getting on a bus that was headed north. And they just kind of went, okay, cool.
Yeah, she'd totally just leave those young children and never return.
Without a note. She didn't take any personal possessions. No jewellery, no clothes.
Which will come up.
2 days after Lynn went missing, JC is moved into the family home permanently, immediately into Lynn's bed.
And her clothes?
I was going to say, she was then wearing all of Lynn's jewellery, all of Lynn's clothes. She assumed the role of mother to the two children.
Yeah. Which she was not equipped for.
Not at all. This was a 17-year-old girl.
Oh.
I mean, babysitting at 17 for a few hours, cool.
But what kind of balls do you have as Chris to do that without, like, I'm sorry, but as the community, was not anyone going, hey, what the fuck?
The neighbour, so the next door neighbour who was she like diagonally behind them, I think.
Right, yes.
So she and Lynn were really close. Mm-hmm. And Lynn would say things to her about JC when JC was living there or coming to babysit the girls. And the neighbour's like, she sunbathes topless outside. And Chris is around when she's sunbathing topless outside. And so that neighbour was then like, oh, well, JC's here all the time now.
Yeah.
she thought that was weird and thought that needed to be reported. I don't know that she reported that to police until all this actually came out.
No, because again, it's that whole like, oh, it's none of my business. Like, that mentality of that era. I think she did, and she regrets it, I believe now, and said, you know, like I was like, it's not really my place to say anything.
Yeah.
And because the police didn't go to her, like if they had gone to her and knocked on her door as a neighbour, sort of saying, do you know anything about what was going on over here? Have you seen anything? She sort of has said, I would have said it. But because they never came to her and asked her, she didn't go seeking out the police to say, hey, I've got information here. Because she just didn't think that it was relevant or, you know, or needed to be involved. I think she thought
it was relevant because I think she wanted to say something. But I think you're right in that era, she just, I don't know, kept minded her own business.
Yeah.
But she and Lynn were really good friends. Like they used to catch up for coffee several times a week. They'd go to each other's houses.
Yeah.
I think they had kids who were similar-ish ages and the kids had played together. And that she was the one who told Lynn about JC in the backyard and JC being around the girls all the time and things that Lynn didn't necessarily know, like JC being at the house when Lynn didn't even know she was meant to be there, stuff like that. So this neighbour did know enough. I mean, you know what it's like as your neighbour, like, you know, you look out the front window and, well,
who does?
my neighbour.
So what?
Well, my neighbour.
Because you know everything that goes on in this street.
Oh, yeah. But, well, that's thanks to my neighbour. No, well, I'm actually not bad for it either. But my neighbour across the road, she sometimes will say to me, she's like, oh, who was at your house today? Whose car was that?
I love it.
Yeah. So, you know, you just know the comings and goings in your neighbourhood, or especially with your immediate neighbours. You just get to know people's patterns and stuff.
Exactly.
And, it just never eventuated to anything. And I think that is so tragic and so sad because something would it have? I don't know. I guess we don't know what would have happened had she been able to report what she reported.
Unfortunately, I think that the police and that they did, without being like, you know, oh, yeah, we'll protect you, mate. It was more of a fact of like, well, we just think he's so great. He wouldn't have done anything. It wouldn't even, I don't think their brains even went to the thought of what if, maybe the husband did this. Because they were like, but it's Chris Dawson. He's a top bloke. Like,
and also, his brother gave him an alibi for the night. So his brother's like, oh, no, he was at my place. Was he?
Don't think so.
Maybe for part of the night.
Maybe after he murdered her.
Yep. And they both moved away. That's my opinion. So it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. The fact that, I mean, as you said, if this happened today, there is no chance in hell he would have gotten away with.
There's no way he could have moved her in that quickly without people going, hey,
no, this is not cool.
There's totally something going on. Because it didn't take long in terms of, like, as you say, she literally moved in there as, like, you know, as the new Lynn and was wearing her clothes, all that sort of stuff. He very quickly really, I mean, she disappeared and obviously nothing heard of her again, that by 1983 he filed for divorce from Lynn and claimed abandonment. He also, in that, claimed that the reason for the breakdown of their marriage was her overspending.
Yeah, he said
frivolous spending.
Overuse of bank card or something like that was what was the actual reason.
No evidence of whatsoever.
Well, her friends all say Lynn was actually quite
frugal.
Quite frugal. Like, tight's probably horrible. She was quite frugal.
Yeah.
She made clothes for the girls. She wasn't a big spender, and they had money.
Yeah,
like they weren't.
He was working so many jobs, jobs. And she was working, and
he'd had the money from when he was playing rugby, which I think was very lucrative for him. And then he had sponsorships. He had lots of other things. He had lots of different jobs. Lynn was working pretty much full time, I think.
Yeah.
So they weren't short of a buck.
No.
And they lived in a beautiful home.
They did.
Really
beautiful
home that they built. Had a swimming pool and it was big.
Yeah,
was
they were
lovely.
not living, you know, tightly. Like, they didn't need to live tightly, but there was no evidence of her overspending in terms of their bank accounts. It like literally could look at it and go, well, yeah, she was spending money on things she needed. Like, other than that, there was nothing. Like, she wasn't going down to the, I don't even know, Louis Vuitton and buying handbags or, you know, like, you know, it was nothing for it. But yes, what an a-hole to then, like, again, blame her for the breakdown of any of the marriage. Yes, there was breakdown of marriage prior to this, but, you know, it wasn't to that point until he murdered her.
Well, this is the thing, right? This goes to motive because he needed to get out of the marriage because he obviously decided that he wanted JC and that she was going to come into the house and replace Lynn and do all of the things that Lynn used to do. Haha, joke's on him, that didn't quite happen.
Yeah.
But as in the way he thought it was going to.
Yeah.
But the reason that he wanted to get this divorce finalised and through is because all he wanted to do was marry JC and have her come in and replace Lynn, essentially.
Which I don't get in a lot of ways. I don't know what.
But, like, why are you replacing one with another? Like, if you want a different life, you want a different life. But your life isn't going to change significantly. See, this is the thing I about affairs and that kind of thing, right? In the first instance, I'm sure an affair is exciting and different and, you know, everyone's feeling all of the feelings. At the end of the day, you're still going to get annoyed when they breathe at night, you know? And when they, I don't know, slurp their soup or whatever it is that irritates you.
Yeah.
You know, when you live with someone and you get beyond that initial sparkly part of your relationship.
Well, she's not going to stay 16 forever.
Well, no. So what did he expect was going to happen, that he was going to have this completely different life? No, you've still got the responsibility of 2 young children.
Yeah.
You're actually putting the responsibility of care for those children onto a teenager who's ill-equipped to deal with it.
So that Chanel and Sharon have come out and said, you know, she wasn't a great mum to them. She was pretty not good. Which I go back to, I don't blame her for that. They were not her kids. She was a kid herself.
Well, they say that she was good up until she and Chris had their own child together.
Yeah.
So she was actually fine when it was just the 2 of them. And I guess that would have been very much in the infancy of all of this as well. You know, she was their babysitter, and babysitters are
They're fun.
And, you know, the kids generally love their babysitters, and you know,
but
it's all great.
when it becomes an actual, you know, role that you have to do, and like that's step parenting is difficult at the best of times. I can't imagine, like, you know, embracing someone else's children as your own, all that is really hard. And she's 17.
Yeah.
She didn't have the mental capacity for it at all.
Way.
And that's, again, it's not her fault. But in this era, there was this idea of her now being an adult at that point somehow, that she had brain functionality of someone who could cope with that. She'd had a traumatic childhood herself,
which hadn't been dealt with. She just jumped from that into another dysfunctional relationship. What
repulses me, the way he basically manipulated her into having sex with him, was exactly that, of like he was going to fix her trauma by having sex with her. Oh yeah. In their, I think it was like, well, if not their first sexual encounter, I think pretty sure that's how she described their first sexual encounter. He was like, yeah, this is going to help you get over your trauma by us doing this. And and then at the end of it, he thanked her and she had to thank him for doing that for her.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so gross.
That is horrible.
Yeah, hearing her speak about that in her testimony is really heart-wrenching. Yeah.
That's horrific.
And it's the grossest of grooming ever. Like, what a piece of shit.
Oh my God, what a total piece of shit. Oh, that poor girl.
Yeah. And it floors me that then there were people at this time, and there's potentially people in this time who have an opinion of her as if she has done the wrong thing.
Oh my God.
I just can't. But we'll get to that in terms of the trial and things
later,
that went on.
Yeah. So they've gotten married, and then they have conceived their own daughter.
Yeah, so they got married in 1984. So it didn't take long, and they just had a ceremony in their backyard with Paul and Marilyn as the witnesses, which again, I just fucking can't handle.
I can't even. But, you know, he's also now robbed JC of that, you know, of a wedding and the celebration that goes with that, the family that goes with that, all of it. And he's just been like, well, no, I'm marrying you and we're doing this in the backyard, because he had to keep it hidden.
Again,
because
narcissists don't have relationships. They take prisoners.
And he absolutely did that with her.
Yep.
They've then gone on to have a daughter of their own, and Chanel and Sharon say that this was really in their minds when things started to change in their relationship with JC.
But I think ultimately it was a change in Chris and her relationship too, because from what she says, that's when it became more violent with her directly, because I think at that point with her having a baby, she now becomes no longer like it's almost like it's not that she was already not a virgin kind of stuff with him. That's been and gone well and truly. But I think it kind of made her. She's now a mother. She's not a young hot 16-year-old. Like it for him, I think that it changed his opinion of her. Now that you're a mother, you're not useful to me.
She describes that, as in JC describes that this is the point in their relationship as well where the physical abuse started.
Yeah.
Not long after the birth of their child. So I think you're absolutely right in saying that something shifted in him, obviously.
Yeah.
He got what he wanted and he was just then repeating the same pattern that he had with Lynn.
Yeah. And she certainly expressed that she felt that it could end up where it did with Lynn, that she thought, because I mean, she always had thoughts of like that. Did he do something to Lynn and hurt her? I don't think
that by the time she ended their relationship, that she was 100% convinced he'd killed her, but she'd had the inkling about that from the day Lynn went missing, because the drink situation the night before. She just knew. She knew there was something going on. The fact that she was in the marital bed 2 days later, he knew Lynn wasn't coming back. Of course he did. He wouldn't have moved her in there otherwise.
If he thought she was going to turn up the next day potentially. No.
So, she said she knew, but what was, she was so young. What was she to do about it? She was scared.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And there's no life experience that teaches you how to handle that.
Nowhere to go. She didn't have her family that she could turn to and say, hey, I'm not in a good place here. I need help to get out.
And her friends were like, their biggest issues were probably like, I've got to save money to buy a car.
Yeah.
Or, am I going to go to university or am I going to go and get a job? That was probably their biggest dilemmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the affluent nature of the people who lived in those areas meant that, fiscally she was behind the eight ball as well, because her family didn't come from money. She didn't have the financial backing that a lot of her friends had as well. So she really was just out on her own by this point. And he'd isolated her.
He knew that he could do that.
Yeah, he'd done exactly what he planned to do. He had her on his own and he had her where he wanted her to be.
Exactly. Yeah, so by 1990, the two separated. Like, I'm good on her. She found a way out. I don't think he was overly happy about that. But at the same time, he didn't really want her in the same way anymore either. So, 1990, they were separated and that was the end of that marriage. Mm-hmm. But obviously she still had a daughter with him. So there was ending the marriage doesn't exactly end the relationship either. So, but I don't know that he was that interested in the child.
I don't believe so. I don't know how much contact he had. I don't think it was zero contact, but I don't think it was a lot. But she moved away as well, so she obviously needed the space.
Yeah. Then by that time, like obviously she'd grown up, and was finally, I guess, clearly in her mind understanding what had happened to her far more and being able to, because up until this point, she's been a child.
But she wasn't even 30 yet when this happened.
This is it. I know. This is it. Her brain's finally at 25 developed enough to say, hang on a second. Yeah. I'm right in what I'm thinking. I've felt sick about this the whole time, but haven't been able to articulate that or understand that for myself. And now I do understand it and I need to get out of it.
She also said that the threat against her was getting greater and greater, and that was the thing that ultimately made her leave and flee, essentially. Yeah. He threatened her life.
She did go to the police when she left. That was really how she got out.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had to go and report things, and she did, which we will get to next week.
That's it. I think this is probably a good spot to leave it, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably there. We sort of move on to the next phase of this, because at this point, in terms of Lynn's, even up until this 1990 point, there's been really no movement in her disappearance and the investigation of that.
No, it's like people have just forgotten that it even happened and have all moved on, aside from Lynn's family and her friends who are trying so hard to get the case or to have her found. Like, her mum would hear of a sighting or something and go and try and find her. Like, it's just horrific. I can't imagine what her family went through.
No, absolutely. Like, it would just be awful. Like,
it's that ambiguous loss that, again, we've spoken about this in previous episodes. It's loss of a person when you don't actually know what's happened. So, do you grieve her because you think she's deceased? Do you like hold out hope that she's going to be found and you're going to see her again and it's all going to be happy families? Like, the ambiguous loss is almost impossible for a human to process.
Absolutely.
Because we need finality. We need to be able to close things off in our mind no matter what has happened. Her family had none of that.
No.
And her mum passed away not knowing any of it.
That's really awful.
It's horrible.
But, I should just go. The only thing that did occur within the investigation was that in 1984 there was an inquest into her death, and in the inquest it was found that it was that she was likely murdered and by someone that knew her. However, the DPP decided that they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute anyone. So that had occurred. And I think that also made it feel like that was sort of around that time they got married, as well. I think that it was all like, oh, see, that's all done and dusted now. Like no one's being arrested. No one's being charged with this. He thought he was in the clear.
Yeah. And then not long after that, I think, there was another sighting of her.
Yeah.
They say that someone said that they saw her on TV in the motorcade of Charles and Diana's wedding, and that she ran across in front of the motorcade, and that was her.
God.
I mean, obviously it wasn't. But, there was a lot out there that people were like, oh, well, could it be? Could it be? And yeah, we'll get to it next week. We all know, obviously, that it wasn't.
No.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode. Stay tuned next week for part 2, where we get to sort of the investigation and then the trial that came of it. So thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like us on all the socials.
Absolutely.
Please send us messages. Let us know what you want us to do for our 50th episode. Can't wait for that one. Our TikToks have been going off again, so please follow us over there at 2 Crime Besties.
Yes.
2 TWO
Yeah,
Crime
TWO
Besties.
if you're looking for us.
And yeah, thanks for joining us again.
And don't forget, if you would like to buy us a coffee, Emma knows the website better than I do.
buymeacoffee.com/2 Crime Besties.
That'd be great. We love it. Thank you very much. Stay curious, Crime Besties.
Bye. At least we remembered to turn Audacity on and clap. So
We remembered everything. At least we're remembering that. Now I've got to remember the case. Same.
We got this. It's cool.
We'll be right.
Okay.